Uh-huh. Let's see, how do we, where's the, now I want to know how do I actually let people in? So I've got it going. Why don't you, if you want, hop on and see if I can let you in. Don't you have the email? Do you want me to forward you the email? Okay. Let's see. Oh, I see. But you just came on. It didn't ask me to. And then now you've dropped off. And I'm recording.
Oh, you can't say deny that.
I cannot complain about that now. Pretty good.
Definitely. We live in a wonderful place.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we forget how much of our country is landlocked, that we have all this and most people don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi.
You're back. Yay.
Okay, and I see I have a glare. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's 6:30, so I want to call the meeting of the West End Neighborhood Council meeting to order. I am now the chair. Unfortunately, Liz had to step down for family reasons. So let's see who's all here tonight. Do we have any other board members? We might want to give it a minute. I know Sean Phelps, our secretary, is coming.
For his last meeting.
But right now I'm just seeing 6 of us. Is there any more than that?
There's actually 9.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Thank goodness. All right. I'm changing my view. All right. So welcome everyone who's here already. I see we have Leslie and Josh and Anna Braz, our police officer. Is there any more liaisons here? Okay, Michelle from Swayze Library, thank you. I'm just where my husband and I are back using Swayze again. I just finished a novel. I'm pleased. So there's not many of us here, so I'm just going to start. West End board elections have arrived. It is this month. We are losing board members. We are down to 4. We need more West End residents running for the board. Perhaps Christina, you would consider, I know that you have joined us in the past. So we are open. We have no election tonight because we have no candidates for the board, but we are looking. Liaisons, I'm gonna let Anna go first, our police liaison.
Hello, I don't know if my camera's working. Oh, let me see. Would help. There we go. Good evening. Hello, everybody. I just have a couple quick things to touch on. One is there was a shooting. I think Sherry brought it up in one of our emails back and forth on Saturday night in the 1600 block of South Mildred, right outside the Venus Mars Lounge. Our detectives are on it. I'm in contact with the owner of the business. We are going to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore, because we don't want that kind of business in the West End, or anywhere really, but especially in the West End. There was a possible attempted kidnapping. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. There was attempted kidnapping in the West End. There was a picture sent out and it's not the accurate, it wasn't the actual person. The description I have is a 6-year-old male, unknown race, wearing a black hoodie with possible red on it. Racing is still an issue, we're aware. We only have 5 officers total on at night on graveyard. And so one incident and they're tied up. So we're doing the best we can with the resources we have, but please keep me posted on anything you guys find coming out. Because if we don't know about it, we think everything's fine.
Where was it was just an attempted kidnapping? Where was it?
Yeah, I'll have to double check the location. I don't want to give
Okay,
the wrong information, but I'll send you an email with the location.
okay. Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. All right, and I know I've heard from several liaisons that they're not going to be here this evening. Hi, Sean, I see that you're here. And Michelle, Swayze Library.
Good evening, everyone. Our biggest announcement right now is that Tacoma Reads is happening. We have lots of programs that are going on during the rest of October and into November for all ages, but some of the really big ones are, well, so the Tacoma Reads book that the mayor selected for this year is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And we have a number of book discussions coming up, and we actually have an interview that the mayor will be having with Isabel Wilkerson on November, I'm looking real quick here. I think it's November 12th, November 13th, I'm sorry. And that does require registration, but I highly encourage you to go check out our website and see all the things that are coming up. Otherwise, our normal programming is continuing. We have a lot of story times happening, a lot of arts and crafts happening. And we are looking forward to someday, hopefully in the new year, being able to open to in-person meetings again, or in-person events again. All the libraries are open and our computers are available. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I do. Somebody told me about your COVID testing kits. And so I did go get 2 of them. Can you speak to us about the libraries?
Yes.
COVID tests?
So the health department is distributing test kits through all of the libraries, Pierce County and the Tacoma Public Library. Right now, we are limited to 2 per household, but I highly encourage you to come in and pick them up. They are the PCR test. So they're the nasal ones, and you mail them in and then you register it, mail it in, and then you get your results within 24 to 48 hours. And there's very clear step-by-step directions. It's really easy to take. These retail for like $112. So come on in and pick one up. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right.
Sherry, I have a question for our library liaison. Hi, Michelle. I'm Christina. I'm the Girl Scout leader at Geiger Montessori just across the street.
Yeah.
And we love the craft kits from the library. Our troop has been really blessed over the summer months to be able to pick up craft kits and to have something to do. I sent a mom volunteer in last week to pick up some craft kits, and she was not allowed to pick them up. Is there been a change with the number of craft kits that are allowed to be picked up? Again, all summer we were able to pick up enough kits for our Girl Scout troop, and last week she was only allowed to pick up 2 for the 2 children that she had with her.
To the best of my knowledge, that has been our policy. We haven't, there's been a couple times when we have received a very limited number of them here. I think we got 10 of one of them that was super popular. But I would encourage you, I will send you the contact information for the children's librarian for this area, for this library, and you can talk to her about possibly getting some more.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, my name's Christina Kent. Could you put that information in the chat, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I don't see any more liaisons. So is Destiny, one of our board members, here tonight? All right, then we'll move on to just real quick, tidy up Tacoma. The West End, because we're down board members. I'm working on another project with Make a Splash Grant. We are not in the West End going to do an organized group cleanup. We are going to promote independent cleanups, and I'm going to put something on next door for that. And any group who wants to do an organized cleanup, we will lend you all the tools, the bag, and even get you a city trash bag pickup. So I'm going to put that on next door, and that's how we're going to do the West End cleanups this year. So
Sherry, I just wanted to pop in and let you know, I talked with Christina Loper. She's a local real estate agent that lives right near the Swayze Library. And she told me she was organizing a West End cleanup for Election Day on it's November 2nd, right?
yeah,
So Christina Loper, that's Christina with a K. So
could you put your contact information in a chat box so I can send you mine so you can give it to her, because we can give them all the tools.
great.
So,
Yeah, that would be wonderful connection.
all right,
okay.
thank you. All right, so we'll go right to Leslie for Port of Tacoma and what's happening with ports and the economy.
Yeah, it's all anybody's talking about, right? We're very popular all of a sudden. So I do have a little PowerPoint that I will share and walk through kind of what has happened and how we got where we are. But I'd like to start by talking about ships at anchor in Puget Sound. When the theory came out in California that it was a ship dragging an anchor over an oil pipeline that burst and caused the oil spill down there, but we got a lot of questions about how does that work in Puget Sound. So I just kind of want to back up a little bit and explain that process. The Coast Guard, and by the way, we're blessed to have a great Coast Guard in the Puget Sound area, but they manage, for lack of a better term, parking spots throughout Puget Sound. So these are places they've already determined are safe to drop an anchor from a ship. They are scattered all throughout Puget Sound, and normally not very many of them get used. With everything that's happening in the supply chain right now, they're all being used. So a lot of people are seeing ships maybe out near the islands or somewhere that they've never seen them before. They were already predetermined as a safe place to put an anchor, but they just weren't used very often. If those are all full, with ships that are waiting to either get into the Port of Vancouver, Seattle, or Tacoma, then Coast Guard either tells the ship to slow down when it's coming our way so that it's slow steaming, they call it, to just try and time its arrival better, or they tell them just to drift off the Washington coast until one of those spots opens up. So I pulled some numbers this morning of what that looks like, because this is completely unprecedented. What's happening has never happened before. So at the moment, there are 11 ships drifting off the Washington State coast that are waiting to get into the Port of Seattle. There are 4 drifting that are waiting to get in the Port of Tacoma. And there are 2 drifting and 5 at anchor waiting to get into Vancouver, and 62 at anchor waiting to get into Los Angeles, Long Beach right now. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how congested everything is at the moment. But this drifting thing where they're just out in the ocean drifting is very new. And because we've never had this problem, we've never had all those parking spaces full before. So I'm going to share my screen now and just sort of walk through kind of how we got to this point, and maybe what we can, well, tell you what we're doing about it. I can get up here. I need to move this. Okay, there we go. So again, I'm fairly certain you've all heard about congestion issues in the supply chain. It's been in the news pretty much every day right now. And so I'm going to just go back to the beginning a little bit so we can kind of get an idea of, I can make it go. It's not going for some reason. Of what is happening. So we have to go all the way back to the mid 2000s to kind of explain this. So things were kind of booming. Everybody thought trade was just going to go up and up forever. And as a result, people overbuilt for the volumes that they thought were going to come. Then we hit the recession, and that prompted a lot of consolidations of terminals, of ship carriers. Worldwide shipping companies merged. There used to be 23 shipping companies in the world. There are now 11. And I think that might get into single digits at some point. So they all created these agreements to start carrying each other's cargoes. And that was sort of fueled by the second largest shipping company in the world, Hanjin, went bankrupt. And that actually happened in one day. They called their ships up and they said, either drop anchor or turn around. We don't have any money for you to go into a port. And that happened in October. So it happened 5 years ago. But what's happening in the fall is we're getting huge shipments in for the Christmas season, and we're shipping out our harvest because we just came through harvest in Washington State. And that just started this consolidation because all that business had to go somewhere. And so it just started all these companies merging together and creating all of these agreements. One of the things that happened locally here is that the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Seattle, we stopped competing with each other. We created the Northwest Seaport Alliance. That's an umbrella over all of the marine cargo operations of both ports. So we started working together to try and better manage both harbors and how ships come in and out. It got to a point where we were fighting each other for 100 years for the same business, and that seemed rather silly. Vancouver had started stealing business from us, and so by working together, we were able to continue to hang on to that market share. But it also prompted reductions in inventory that companies bought and sold because everybody was in a recession. So as the result of that, the supply chain was already stretched a little thin. So now we entered the pandemic, and this is, I don't know how easily you can see this on your screen. There's a lot on this, but if you just look at the orange headlines, you'll start to see the steps of how this whole thing has snowballed into chaos. The graphic is from the American Ports Association, but you can see from people, everybody started buying stuff at home. We all started shopping online, and the manufacturing around the world stopped. Well, then it started up again, and then it stopped again with each wave of COVID, started up again. So when it actually really started booming again in manufacturing, all of the shipping supplies that they needed, empty containers and the actual ships were in the wrong places because everything had just stopped. It left empty containers without product and product without containers. We had workers get sick in the supply chain. In Los Angeles, that's what started their problem. They had a huge outbreak of COVID in their longshore. And so they didn't have the manpower to start unloading the ships, and that's how they started getting backed up. 100,000 trucking jobs were lost in 2020. That shut down also, and one of the stats on here is 25 million containers were in the wrong place to meet those resurgent demands. And shipping routes, which are kind of like bus routes. So the same ships kind of work on a route throughout the world, especially from Asia. We are kind of the first port of call for Asia ships to come in. And so anything that disrupts that normal route starts causing some chaos as well. So shipping routes got canceled because of COVID, and there were things that had to kind of rearranged. And then one of them that you probably can't see because it's on the far right of the screen is cargo. There's a lot of cargo normally moved on passenger airlines. Well, none of those were flying, or at least very few, because nobody was flying. So again, all of that cargo kind of got stranded someplace. So here's what it looks like today. Obviously, most of our terminals are extremely busy. The demand right now, the way people are shopping is primarily import business. Now, I just want to back up for a second and let you know that in the Port of Tacoma, 80% of all of the cargo that comes through the Port of Tacoma is destined for the Chicago Midwest area. So it's going to come in, and get on a train and go out of here. And we were doing really, really well until the trains got screwed up in this whole process. So about 2 weeks ago, there were 33 full trains waiting to get into Chicago to unload. It was so backed up, they actually stopped accepting trains from the West Coast for a whole week to try and get caught up. But what that means is we're not getting those empty train chassis back to put the containers on to get them out of here. We were the first port in on the whole West Coast in 1982 to put the trains right up next to the ships. That's called on dock rail. We have the rail lines go right out to the ship, so you could very efficiently take the cargo off the ship, put it right on the train. Can't do that if you don't have the train chassis to put it on. We had to start metering the trucks as they were coming in because we just didn't have the space to manage them. And that meant trucks are going to have a longer stay in the port because they can't get turned around as fast. And then, of course, all of the anchorages started to happen and the drifting off the coast. And when the whole point of the goal here is to get this stuff off the dock. So if you get it off the ship, we've got to get it off the dock. It's got to either go out by train or truck, or we have to move it off the dock so we can accept another ship. So the operational challenges of that, and there's so many pieces to this snowball, are compounded also by Customs and Border Patrol. They inspect every container that comes into the United States. So their backlog of trying to get caught up on their inspections created other issues as well. So we have to try and put them somewhere where they can actually do their inspections. We were running out of truck chassis. There were a lot of truckers who lost their jobs in 2020. And maybe if they were an independent person, just said, I'm going to go do something else. And so truckers shortages, chassis shortages, and now let's get to the warehouses in the distribution center. They are completely full and also buried with products. So even if the truck can pick the load up and get it to the warehouse, they can't accept it necessarily because they're full. And there's been a lot of talk in the last week or so about can we go to running the port 24/7, which we could easily do. We've always been able to do that and put on extra longshore shifts. But the problem is, again, if that truck picks up that container, gets to a distribution center that's not open 24/7 or is full, you still have a stoppage of product. It has nowhere to go at that point. So here's what we're doing. In both Tacoma and Seattle, we've created as many what we call near dock container yards as possible to help get that product off of the terminals. If you drive around the tide flats at all, any blank piece of land that we either own or could lease is going to be having containers stacked on it right now. We also created one off of Port of Tacoma Road for truck chassis storage. So I think we can put about 300 truck chassis there. So we can kind of start to get everything organized where it needs to be. But we are also having absolutely daily conversation with the rail partners, with the shipping lines, and the people who own the stuff in the containers. They're called beneficial cargo owners. They actually are the Targets and the Home Depots and the people whose product is in those containers. We're talking to them every day, trying to figure out how to coordinate all of this better. So we understand what their needs are and we understand where their product is and how to get it out of here. We're also working to expand the GATE program, which probably is right now, it means extra long shifts. But again, we've got to figure out that whole night thing. So we've been talking with some of the major distribution centers, like, could you go to a 24/7 operation to help keep that product flowing? And we're doing some interesting things, like in Seattle, Terminal 5 is that big terminal that's right under West Seattle. When you used to be able to go over the West Seattle Bridge, you would look down on it, and it's been vacant for years. And the Northwest Seaport Alliance has been putting a lot of money into that to get that up and going, get new cranes in there and start using that as an active terminal. It's going to open in January. So we will be the only port on the West Coast to be able to open a new terminal. And that's going to help a lot once we can get it open. But in the meantime, there are 3,000 containers being stored at that terminal right now, just to have a place to put them, waiting for the trains or the trucks to be able to come and get them. So it really is daily conversations, trying to talk to all the people and all the partners, because we, as a port, we don't actually run the docks. We lease the docks to companies to run. So we're kind of the cog of the middle of the wheel, trying to coordinate all those spokes of the wheel to make sure we can get it going. And of course, as I mentioned, that means conversations with Customs and Border Patrol too, because that's an issue. If they can't get the inspections done, it's not going to be able to move anyway. So overall, Port of Tacoma really has done better than most ports on the West Coast, and we were doing still fabulously until the trains started to have issues. And that now that you understand that a lot of our product is flowing through us and out, you can kind of get that. But this is happening on a global scale. It's happening now on the East Coast. Europe is having real problems as well. So it's a global supply chain issue right now, and it is a complicated story. So I'm trying to put it in summary as best I can. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, but I kind of just wanted to explain all the little moving pieces of it, and how through this pandemic and the shutdown and then the resurgence, it all sort of fell apart. And my contact's on there, but I'll put that in the chat too, so I can take this down, and then you guys can ask me anything you want.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It really is. So it's not just the worker shortage at the port, it's the worker shortage in the trucks and the train backups, and it's a little bit of everything.
We don't actually have a worker shortage in Seattle and Tacoma. We have the longshore, and they're getting plenty of hours. They're very happy to be working. We have enough crew to unload the ships and move the cargo. The problem started when we didn't have anywhere to put it. We couldn't get the trucks, we could get the trains in to get it out of there.
Oh, well, okay.
But yeah, you're right. It's everybody. I don't know of an industry or a business out there right now that's not short staffed. I mean, everybody's looking for workers, and they, it's more than just restaurants now. And so all of those things, again, that goes back to the warehouses and the distribution centers. If they don't have enough people to be able to run extra hours, then you've still got a cog in there that's going to slow everything down.
All right. Do they project an end to any of this?
I had one of my port commissioners this morning say mid-year next year. I hope he's right. That seems a little positive to me. I think maybe too hopeful. I mean, I'm thinking it could take a year or so to get this calmed down. Now, it's going to help us a lot to get that one new terminal opened in Seattle, because it's actually a very large one. So it's going to be able to do a lot of work, and it does have the rail lines right there as well. So I think that's going to be helpful. But I was just looking at my list here of the ships that are drifting, and I've got down how many days they've been at anchor or drifting. The shortest number of days is 2, and the highest is 28. So there's a ship that's been out there for 28 days just waiting to get into a port. And this is just unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this.
Wow. Very informative. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I hope you're able to give it to other other meetings.
Yeah, I mean, me too, because, one of the concerns here is the small businesses that maybe only get 2 containers a month. If they can't get that product, that really starts to hurt. And I heard this morning from a retailer who, there are pieces of what they manufacture that they have to get, that they have to import, and they can't get those pieces to finish their product, to actually get their product out. So it kind of just starts snowballing through all, and with the ripples. I mean, we hear about the empty shelves at Safeway or at Home Depot or something, but it's really the smaller businesses that are going to get hurt too. And so shop local, but make your Christmas presents. But yeah, I really try to support these smaller companies that are in your neighborhoods, because they could use it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Very, very informative. Not good news, but boy, I learned a lot. Oh my goodness. Thank you. That was all very interesting information.
Sure.
Thank you. Any more questions for Leslie? All right, we'll go on to Josh Jorgensen from Tacoma Housing Authority.
Great, thanks, Sherry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I've got a few diagrams and visuals and everything to go through. How's that sound? Good. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. Starting off, I think it's been a month or two since we talked about the sale of the first couple of lots there at James Center North, now at Viva Crossing. Yep.
Are you sharing your screen? Because I don't see it.
It didn't click. Share. Sorry, going from Zoom to Teams. Okay, how's that? Better? All right, good.
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so here's our marketing collateral. You guys may have seen this and remember it from before. Again, just a quick overview of what was James Center North is now transitioning to the name of Viva Crossing. Lots 1A and 1B are up here along Mildred on the right, Lakeside Landing to the north. And these are the lots that we offered up for sale. Again, in alignment with our master plan that Sherry and others from the West End Neighborhood Council consulted on. Again, you can see the rendering from TCC here. We did have 3 offers on these lots from 4 different developers. 2 of the developers, development partners, buyers, we're calling them, offered for both 1A and 1B. And a third proposal offered one developer would do 1A and a separate developer would do 1B. I wish that I had more formal decisions right now, but it looks like we're leaning towards the developers that will do the separate lots. We like that for a couple of reasons. One, it allows a little bit more variety. 2, it'll be able to fit in the timeline a little bit better so that all the construction won't be going on at one point at one time. And 3, it'll be a little bit more of a mix for the unit types. So instead of having 500 studios, potentially we would have multiple bedroom sizes and multiple income, like we had talked about in the master plan. So again, the overview, like you guys have seen, the priorities that we were looking in addition to high design and all of that. Again, good quality developers, buyers, getting a good sense that the project type and the unit types will match up with what we anticipated in the master plan. Some degree of affordability. It won't all be deeply affordable public housing, but for these first 2, we are looking for a mix of both the market and some naturally occurring affordable units. All the purchase prices were in the ballpark. They were all pretty competitive. And then just the commitment fee, the earnest money, if you guys are interested and involved with the real estate process, just all of those details. Overall feasibility, we think, was decent for all of them. There were definitely some that were stronger that we think that we'll be able to start negotiating a purchase and sale in the next month. As far as timeline, we're not exactly sure how long that will take to close on the transaction, and we anticipate it could be 6 months to a year before that sale actually goes through. So as many of you know, with these land sales, there's a lot of due diligence involved with it, and the buyers want to make sure that they understand what they're getting into, understandably, of course. So with that, I can go back through some of the other visuals, but I think you guys have seen that plenty, and I'll open it up for questions on this.
So you open up for questions now, you say?
Yeah, if you've got questions.
Well, refresh our memory for building 1A and B. What were we looking at there?
Yeah, we anticipate 1A will be about 6 stories. And we anticipated this would be more student oriented on the market rate side. It doesn't all have to be market, of course, and there may be families or faculty or others involved in there. But because of its proximity to TCC and the demonstrated need for student housing in the area, that's what we anticipated. I think most of the developers understood that as well. and plan for some type of student population in that building. 1B is a little bit smaller. You can see its footprint isn't quite as big, and it wraps around the existing Buddhist Center, which is right here, SGI International. And we anticipated that that would be a little bit larger units, potentially, maybe 75 to 100 units, probably closer to the 4-story, 5-story heights. And again, no parking directly on any of these, but there are street parking, and then probably some agreement with TCC for off-hours parking over there on their campus.
So regarding the no parking, but in the interim, before the others get built, there'll be parking in the parking lot.
Correct, yeah, and we have a shared use agreement. You can't see it here, but behind Fred Meyer, we have access to that overflow parking as well.
Okay. And any news on on-site dog parks?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention, as part of that purchase and sale negotiation, we're putting together what essentially is a homeowners association, an ownership association for all of the different owners that will be on site. And we have various topics that are in there, specifically with trash management, the open spaces, how all of those get maintained. There's lots of different layers of landscaping, both right next to the building that the owner would do themselves and or have the larger association maintain, like out in Salishan. That's really the model that has been successful, where it gives THA a little bit more leverage in making sure that the grounds and the properties stay maintained, and we're able to address any issues that come up.
So does that include a dog park?
So you'll remember the park that we have right here. We think that it will serve all of the different users. It's a public park based on our understanding now, and dogs would definitely be allowed in it. We've got doggy bags and everything else that it's out at our Salishan and some of our other properties. It seems to function pretty well. And with that ownership association, we'd be able to clean it up, keep that trash maintained and discarded as needed.
Yeah, pretty well.
Okay, good.
It'd be totally different.
I hear some comments in the back. Any questions for me?
Josh, I have a quick question. You mentioned on-street parking. Is that the internal streets to the development then you're talking about? And where would that be? And how many-
Yeah, great question. We call it on-street, but you're right. It is a little bit more of, it's on the private property here, and it would surround the buildings. So this is technically 15th Street, even though it's a private road that goes to Tacoma Vista. But there'd be some parking spaces there, some parking spaces, if you can see my cursor, along there and then along here. So for 1A, you get about 15 around the building. 1B is closer to 10. And then there's under building structured parking here in the second phase that THA will build. And then the third or fourth phase back here. And I think there's like 40 spots here and then another probably closer to 50 or 60 back here.
Okay, great. And I assume, that you're probably assuming some of the students won't even have cars since they're walking across the street to class.
Correct, yeah. Or if they do, our initial conversations with TCC are that they would be open to figuring out how to get them permitted to park there full time.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, of course, great questions, thank you. Parking is always important. So I think we're lucky with this site that there's not a lot of direct overflow into neighborhoods, which is important, but definitely figuring out where all those cars go is definitely a challenge. So again, I'll continue to come back as we have updates for this. I think that the buyers that we'll end up making a recommendation to negotiate with, they're familiar with Tacoma, have built in Tacoma, and have good products and are good landlords at the end of the day. So I don't anticipate major concerns from the group here, but I'll continue to keep you guys updated as we have more formal info for you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And Sherry, if I've got 5 more minutes, I can show the branding stuff too. You want to see that?
Yep, please.
All right, so forgive me, I've got a lot of windows open here. I do have a couple new documents to share. So this is what they call a brand book. And let me see if I can make this smaller. looks at brand guidelines. You guys have been great and working with us as we've gone through this process. We haven't done it with an outside consultant before, and so it's been a good learning process for us. But this is really black and white intentionally, just to see how it is at its base components. Aviva Crossing, like we talked about, is the name. The primary logo mark is here. Just as a reminder of some of the components that we heard, this is kind of the bridge motif that we talked about, the reflection on the water here. Aviva meaning life, and has some different definitions in different languages, but we think that it really goes along with the themes that we heard from our community advisory group. And again, kind of the bridge that goes up here, it didn't come across as much, but we like the symmetry in the name. These are some of the other ways that it could go along with white, black, blue, and orange. We'll get to orange in a second. And then this is kind of the logo or mark that we've talked about too, and it has the A, V, I's, and A again, of course. So we thought that was kind of unique in the palindrome that it is. And then also some of the other materials, how it looks up against that. This looks like an old chalkboard. And then how it would look on products and stuff too as we go forward. But that's the brand book. Of course, we've got these primary colors, secondary colors, the materials too that you guys advised on, landscaping. Color means a lot, and that includes the natural environment, text, font, and then some of the other potentially future creative ideas that we've got. Of course, you see here the mural. Hopefully everybody's been able to go out and see that next to Sushido. And then some of the other kind of geometric themes that might pop up other places on the property as we continue to implement those interim activations and other artistic elements. So we'll put that to the side, and then quick background too. These are the logos that we looked at originally. And what we ended up with was this one. And I know we had some comments about orange the last time and how it compared to Hunt Middle School over there, the middle or elementary middle school. And so the rendering that I came up with from Hunt was more on the muted orange side. And the other stakeholders that we've got went with the brighter orange and the blue, again, for water, the reflection here, and then the brightness of the kind of the vibrancy and newness of West Tacoma. So my main request from you was if there's specific, I guess concern wouldn't be the word, but if there's definite hesitancy against orange, or if we're okay to move forward with all of that. So I'll take comments, but I think that, again, what we heard was not to go with the color that they picked at Hunt, and we went with this brighter one instead.
Well, I like the burnt orange. What color's Hunt?
Hunt is the burnt orange. Pull that back up.
Hunt doesn't have any orange.
Oh,
So this
I don't know why. I don't know why you think there's orange in the Hunt building, but there's no orange in the Hunt building.
Well, is this orange or brown? This is the rendering that I pulled off of theirs. So maybe it's brown. And again, the comments that I heard last time, specifically, I thought it was about the buildings, keep away from orange on the buildings. For our logo and branding here, we tried to not make it one of the primary colors. Blue is more the primary color and orange is more the accent. But I'm open to feedback too, if there's specific shades or other things that we should explore. And I heard from Sherry too, that burnt orange is more preferable.
well, on the building. I don't care so much
Gotcha.
about the logo.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, this time it's just about the logo, and I'll come back when we start to look at colors for the building. Okay. Okay, well, I'll take these comments and we'll continue to roll it out. It's been a gradual rollout. We appreciate everybody's patience with that. As it gets to be more official and we negotiate those purchase and sales, we'll definitely be formalizing that. But for right now, that's what I've got to share.
I want to make one more comment about the dog
Oops.
park. I am working with Metro Parks and the city of Tacoma Solid Waste on Make a Splash grant. I met with Metro Parks yesterday for Titlow. But I made a comment about China Lake Park, which is the closest park to this James Center North. And the first words out of Richard Madison's mouth was, because I said how clean it was at China Lake Park. And he goes, yes, he goes, but they have a dog poop problem. So just so you know, anyway, because I'm interested in making up signs that say, just because nobody's looking doesn't mean you don't have to pick it up. Because that's kind of, it's sad but true, it has to be stated. So just so you know, the nearest park for this place has a poo problem. Okay.
Yeah, no, that is great to know. And I think you hit the nail on the head too, having those eyes on the street and making sure that this park reads as urban and as well maintained is definitely important. So
okay.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Anything else from me?
Nope.
I was just curious who did your brand book because it's beautiful work.
Yeah. Ankrum Moisen, they have Portland and Seattle offices, and they worked on our master plan. They have a specific group there that does branding stuff, and I think the guy came from Nike or somewhere else, but they've been great to work with and highly recommended.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'll stop sharing my screen here now. And Sherry, as always, if anything else comes up, let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, we have Councilman John Hines. Do you have any news to report to us, Councilman?
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you to the West End Neighborhood Council. Just let's give a couple quick, brief updates. I think the more exciting news, at least for this group, is Tidy at Tacoma is moving its way into the West End here in the near future. They'll be cleaning up. I was looking at the dates just a second ago on my phone. The Narrows, where am I at here? Tacoma Narrows Business District cleanup is Tuesday, November 2nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then the Point Ruston, the Ruston Point Defiance one is November 4th. So I'm very happy that that's finally making its way into the West End, and they'll be in Proctor, 6th Avenue, the 6th Ave farther east of you all on the October 29th, and then they'll be in Proctor the last day, which is I think November 6th. So yeah, so they're coming through. Exciting news is, the budget, we're looking at the mid modification for the budget for the city. We do just for people's background, we do the budget every 2 years. And so we approved the budget last year in 2020 for 2021, 2022. But in the middle of the budget, we do a modification based on kind of dollars coming into the city, where tax revenues are. So if they're higher or lower, we're able to kind of make adjustments. As you probably have heard, a lot of people are staying home and buying things on Amazon right now. And so sales tax looks pretty good for the city side of things. And so we're going to be making some adjustments. So one of those will be some funding to keep Tidy Up Tacoma going into the next year. So I think right now we're looking at maybe a quarterly, like each coming back to each of the business districts. So that should hopefully be good. And then we're going to continue to look. I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues to find, a funding source to keep that rolling. And that'll include light truck and maybe even some more kind of maintenance from the grounds crew for some of the plantings and things like that. So all good things to be looking forward to coming up. From the city side of things, Home in Tacoma is currently still working its way through the IPS committee. And so we're looking at, we've been talking about different pieces of that. It's supposed to be coming back to the entire council on November 9th for a committee of the whole conversation. And I see Director Huffman is here, so he can correct me if I said that wrong. But November 9th, Home in Tacoma, the proposal the committee is going to put together will be back before us. Then I know many of you have been really interested in kind of the different maps of where they're looking at. So I would encourage you, if I will put some information out in my newsletter, but if you can tune in, we'll have more information on November 9th about where that lands. I'm trying to think what else is going on. Those are the big ones right now. I'm happy to answer any questions people have if there's something I'm missing. I think one side point, I guess when I was here last time, there was a group here talking about the Baltimore project and the updates to the Baltimore project. So some of the concerns that those neighbors had specifically were about traffic impacts and speeding cars and pedestrian safety. And I just wanted to report that the city staff has worked with the developer to do two things. Number one, including 2 speed humps as part of that road update project to kind of take care of some of the speed concerns. And they're also going to put in a new brand new striped sidewalk near the Ruston Senior Center, between the Senior Center and the VFW. So those were 2 of the big issues that came up kind of in that last conversation. And I'm very happy staff was able to kind of work out some at least initial ways to address those concerns from those neighbors. I know we talked about that here last time. Okay.
All right, very good. Any questions for Councilman Hines?
I have one. It's Christina Kent.
Hey, Christina.
Councilman Hines, you had a meeting in the West End, the Narrows West neighborhood at the Geiger Circle roundabout. Yeah. And I wasn't able to attend that. I just wanted to express that at that meeting, I wanted to let you know that I was not in support of the rezoning for multi-family housing in our neighborhood.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to let you know, since I wasn't able to attend that meeting. What is the progress with that's happening?
Well, Director Huff, Peter, do you want to talk a little about where it's at? I listened to it. So it's in the current IPS committee. Okay. I am not a member of the IPS committee, but I do listen to it every Wednesday. It was last Wednesday, this one. Currently, based on the feedback we got from the public, the planning staff came back with kind of 4 different maps that were proposed, which went from a range of kind of none of the mid-scale, which is kind of the bigger multifamily zoning change. So just looking purely at the change from the single family to kind of the low scale, which is the duplex, triplex idea, and no mid-scale changes, to mid-scale on kind of high transit corridors, which would be 6th Ave, South 19th, and Pacific Avenue. So just having it there. And then there was a kind of another level up, which was kind of mid-scale, or these kind of mid-sized buildings around kind of mixed use centers. And then there was a final one, which was basically similar to what the proposal was made from the planning commission you all have seen, where the mid-scale is kind of along all the bus routes. And so the current the committee that's working on it is kind of deciding on what the proposed map is going to look like, and also the speed at which those are going to be implemented. So there's kind of different scenarios about how quickly they'd be put in place. And then the conversation along with how fast it's put in place is trying to address some of the concerns we've heard from the neighbors, which are things around kind of design and style, infrastructure impacts, those things, right? So there's different schedules that are out there. And Director Huffman, did I get all of that or no? Please listen.
Yeah, you did, council member. So I would just add that, so the IPS committee is looking at several options. And in addition to the map, they're also looking at design elements, infrastructure elements, affordability elements. The map seems to be generating most of the comments. And so at their last meeting, they've instructed staff to work with them and come out with a draft proposal that will go out with the IPS agenda either tomorrow or on Friday. And their last IPS meeting is scheduled for the 27th. Which is next Wednesday. And the intent is for them to discuss it at the meeting on the 27th and forward a map proposal or map proposals to the full council. And as Councilmember Hines said, then the full council would discuss that at a committee of the whole meeting on November 9th. So the IPS committee is still doing their work. And so I encourage you to participate in that conversation or watch that online. And then again, come into the full council in November.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councilmember Hines,
yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah, I'm reading through it right now.
So yeah, if you could address that, that'd be great.
Regarding the home Tacoma 5 scenarios discussed last week's IPS committee, 4 of these would have mid-scale residential development on Jackson now between 6th and 19th. Feedback citizens living on Geiger Mine did not support this position. Okay, so that's I remember they did talk through that. I think the question that I have to ask of Jane, I have to kind of go give a kind of a follow-up question, right? Which is the reason why Jackson has been identified, right, at least in a couple of the maps, is it's a kind of a major arterial. It's a 4-lane arterial, a major route which people travel upon, which is kind of one of the criteria that we used for like landing on Jackson. So what we're trying to do, so when we look at a plan like this, right, we have to come up with a way to determine what corridors potential development goes on in a way that is kind of the same across the city, right? So the challenge that I would say that we have to come up with, right, is that if we're going to say like, well, Pacific Avenue is a 4-lane corridor and it makes sense to put the mid-scale there, well, that opens up the conversation to every 4-lane arterial is potentially one that would make that we could look at mid-scale. So so the question with Jackson, and I think the 2 maps I saw, which was the 6th Ave, South 19th, and the Pacific Avenue, which was high frequency transit areas, that one wouldn't have South 19th and Jackson upon it. So that's kind of the question and where we're landing on some of this stuff, right? So I've heard pretty clear from neighbors they don't like that. Most of the concerns around heights and building heights, right, which we are talking about with design and standards, and so most of that area is protected with this nuisance overlay. So I think much of that can be kind of addressed through some of the other pieces of it. But I guess my point would be, the map I've liked the most is looking at the 6th Ave, South 19th, Pacific Avenue, and as that one is kind of the primary one we work on. But then also I work with planning staff to look at how we can look at some of the underutilized commercial spaces in the city of Tacoma, like 6th Avenue, where there's kind of like underutilized commercial spaces that many of you have talked to me about. Like, why are we looking at building stuff in these places when there's like vacant properties on 6th Avenue? What we can do to get those going and generate stuff there. So I'm to be determined, Jane. I'm waiting to see what the rest of my committee says.
And I appreciate what you're saying, to be determined, because I have not heard that your scenario is a separate one from the other options. It seems to be combined with a couple of the other options. And we don't have transit. The underlying assumption I heard was transit was what triggered the arterials.
Yeah.
And the transit stops are not on
Jackson.
On Jackson.
Yeah.
So if I could just clarify something here. So yeah, so one of the committee members asked us to look at a different designation apart from transit routes. And those are designated principal arterials. If you look at the principal arterial map that was shared, it has streets on there that don't have transit and some that do have transit. So for example, 21st Street is on that map, as well as Westgate Boulevard, which then turns into Jackson and then Bridgeport, which it's just a council member on the committee asked to see what would a map look like with designated principal arterials, and that's where that map came from. So that is part of just the committee's work and looking at, okay, large streets, arterial streets, which are, like the council member said, typically have 5 lanes, 2 travel lanes and a left-hand turn lane. You know, what are those streets? And then there's a process of looking at those streets and saying what primary arterials have transit on them. So that's part of the whole discussion. So that was just one layer of information that was asked staff to provide the committee.
Yeah. And so then the point what I'd say, and that Peter is saying, is like, when you ask for those principal arterials, they're going to give you a map with all those streets on it. And the conversation is, if we're going to pick one and not the other, that you have to have clear criteria of why this, not that, right? Otherwise, we start getting a lot of issues it becomes challenging. So that's one of why we landed with kind of that map too. Cherie?
When I was looking at some of these latest sets of maps last week, I thought that I noted, from what I could see, I didn't see the whole city, I don't believe, that the West End got hit quite a bit. I thought the West End had a lot of arterials marked, and compared to some other areas that did not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it has, I mean, it's not deliberate. It's based on like development patterns. The West End was built like after the 1940s and 50s. So when you have a car-centric kind of development pattern where people wanted really big arterials to get to their homes and take them to shopping. And where if you look at like the north end, like the other part that I represent, like it was built in the 20s before a lot of people had cars, it's a lot more densely packed, smaller streets, not a lot of arterials. So the West End, if you're going to just basically make your map based on the major arterials, there's just a lot of them in the West End, which I guess 50 years ago, people thought that was a good thing, because it meant you could get to the shop, you can get from your house to the shopping center, to the freeway, to wherever you needed to go, to the mall quickly as possible. But maybe, like I think that's more kind of what it is. It's also why I know you've also brought up, there's lots of kind of apartments in that part of town. And I think that's also kind of a legacy of when it was built out.
Right. So, but don't say it was the people who lived here. It was the planners and the road developers. I mean, I'm sure they didn't have an input on that. So
yes. But I think though, I guess I would just say, like, if you ask people in the 50s, like what they were looking for to buy a home, they wanted that stuff. The planners didn't build that because that wasn't what people wanted.
Well, I would say they built it just because it was the design style of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm asking is that, will you take that into consideration so you don't heavily develop the West End just because we have wider roads?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's, the side of it is looking at, then maybe it's more of a transit-centered focus, which two of the committee members have really leaned on and said, that focusing on transit corridors is important. But then that still leaves us with South 19th and 6th Ave. And Mildred, right? Because that's another one.
Right. I can see that we should put in our fair share of roads, but not more than our fair share.
Yeah. No, agree. The question Paul Throw asked, just kind of a follow-up question. Paul, yeah, there was a list of multiple concerns that came out from the Baltimore neighborhood. The two that the city was able to address was speed humps on Baltimore to address kind of the speeding car issue, and then striping the crosswalk at the senior center. Just those were the two they brought up. The other two concerns about looking at a roundabout and some of the right-of-way changes with the road design are not currently addressed and not dealt with. So that's something that that's to be addressed later. Thank you. Okay. All right. Bruce.
Yes, I've lived in next to Pearl on North 33rd for 48 years. And
yeah.
Soon be moving into congregate care, but the homeless situation has really deteriorated in the last 2 years. People sleeping under the freeway down by 6th Avenue on Pearl there on the sidewalk, and people living in their cars. What is the future for North Tacoma?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess it's multiple kind of pieces of that, Bruce. So we're seeing more people out on the street. This is something we're seeing kind of across the region, not just in the city of Tacoma, but that doesn't mean we don't need to be addressing it. So from our side, from the city side, trying to identify locations where those people can move to. So current federal law dictates that, we have to try to provide places for people to go to when they're living on the street. So trying to identify locations so that, like the gentleman who sleeps under 6th Avenue under the Pearl Street, who I think many of you have probably talked to, I talk to him quite regularly. He's pretty happy right there, but I think I don't know if that's the best place. So trying to find locations for people to move to and get them the services needed to get them off the street is a piece of that. Like the tiny home villages on 6th and Orchard. Oh, I just should say that. The governor visited the 6th Ave Orchard Thames site yesterday. The governor was here yesterday. I got to meet and talk to him a little bit about that site. Just came to check it out. Very impressed with what was there. So that was good. But finding locations like that for the people sleeping in the cars is trying to set up, there's some cities that have safe camping site or safe parking lots for people to go to, so finding a place or some places for them to kind of park for the time being. I know a lot of people are really concerned about that. And there's real limits to what we can do as a city now. There's a Supreme Court case came out a few weeks ago out of the city of Seattle that really just does not allow cities across our state to impound vehicles that people are currently living in or to deem their homes. It's a lot. If people are interested, I can send you the article about it. So finding a place for them to like park their cars where they can be safe and we can get them the services they need. It's more drugs and alcohol services. It's more mental health services in the city. So it's a lot more service providing. A couple of us council members are working on looking at like a camping ban here in the city of Tacoma. We had one in the past. It lapsed a few years ago. It cannot be enforced unless there are places for people to go, like that are experiencing homelessness. So you can't criminalize homelessness if there's no place for people to go. So we're working in tandem to try to identify places for people to go, and also having the tools to kind of encourage them to move there. There's kind of two pieces of it. Longer term, it's trying to find more housing for people either in the city or more houses, just someplace for people to move into.
Councilman, this is
Yes.
Christine. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm gonna jump on that a little bit. I know it sounds weird, but I love our homeless neighbors in our community for the most part. We have some wonderful people that live at the park and live on the property at TCC that I've met, just visiting in the community. But we're having a problem right now. The new Hunt Middle School is open.
Yeah.
And there is a van that is parked on South 10th Street, right up by the dome part of the school property.
Yeah.
And there's a gentleman living in that van, but he has spread out his stuff out on the sidewalk, onto the school grounds property. There's now tires and seats, and my child walks, and bikes. My daughter is telling me my daughter walks to school and she's afraid to walk to school because our homeless neighbor sometimes sleeps on the sidewalk, and there's been drug and alcohol paraphernalia, and it's like on campus property, and our young citizens also deserve the right to feel safe walking to and from school. And we've filled out the complaint that we're supposed to do to the city, but it seems to be getting worse, not getting better. And I know he's been there since at least August, and here it is mid to late October. And I know he needs somewhere to be, but our kiddos need to be safe walking to school too.
Agreed. This is a challenge I've had in some of the further conversations around the encampments that are near the school district building, which is, that, it's not inhumane to let people live on the streets. And there's a conversation about like, well, who should and should not, should we allow people to do that or not? And it's a tough question. I mean, I don't think we want to be a city where we just say, well, our solution to this is just to kind of let people sleep wherever they can find space. There's real downsides to that, as you can see with this. The challenge is just like, we have to identify places for them to go. What I will do though, just to not like, I don't want to like just leave this one hang. I'll follow up with, I see Officer Braz jumped off, but I'll follow up with the CLO for the district and have them reach out and make contact with them. I'm having a similar issue with a van down over by Skyline Elementary School off of 23rd and Basalt. And so where we're at right now, for the most part, is there is space, there's services available to them to go and offer them services. So I'll have someone make contact with them and see what they can do to encourage you to move on. If he's spread out on school campus property, the school could trespass him, and that could move him on from there. That would be the other piece of it, right? Because you need the property owner to also say that.
Miss Mothersmith and the vice principal, his name, Mr. Kellogg, thank you, Natalie, have said that their hands are tied, that they can't do anything.
Really?
But he's now spread out all over the school property. My husband and we took pictures the other day. It started as a little pile next to his car in the in the little green zone between the curb and the sidewalk. And now it's spread all onto the grass near near the dome.
Yeah. So I work for the school district. That's my other job when I'm not doing this. So I'll follow up on that one because if they are on school district property, they can trespass them, and they do that kind of stuff all the time. So I'll have to figure out why they haven't done that so far, because that they can do that. And you know, this is a piece that as we start talking about where people can't camp, I thought I am place, you know, one of the things I'm really interested in with a kind of a camping ban, at least, is having some kind of buffer zone around schools and parks, right? Because I think that's really important. I mean, in my mind, right, there's issues like this with children walking to school every day. Is something I'm very interested in. But I'll see what we can do from our end. It's just we have spaces for him to go, and just trying to encourage him to go on. The challenge you run into a lot of those things is we may have space for them to go, but can't stay 24 hours a day. They have stuff they want to take with them. There's lots of other limitations that make this really difficult.
Yeah, I understand. And I know our homeless neighbors need to be somewhere, but this is not.
Yeah.
Kids can't walk to school feeling safe, and it's right there, like on the school property and bordering the school property. It's on the block. She can't go to school and feel safe. Sometimes the secretary in the main office will walk her to the corner past the van because she's afraid.
Okay.
And that's above and beyond what a school secretary should be doing.
Yeah, agreed. So I will follow up on that one, because and I'll even go over there and talk to them. Just, I think that's important. I do a lot of work at Hunt. So,
Councilmember Hines, I have one question.
Yeah.
So the tiny villages are great, but we need hundreds or maybe thousands more units above what there is now. Is there any thought, or would it even legal to have like a large tent camping site, maybe on a vacant property somewhere, rather than the structures?
Yeah, I mean, that is fine. That is legal. It is possible. I think yet again, I would say the challenge with almost all of that is whenever we float the idea of something like that happening, neighborhoods aren't raising their hands for those things to show up. And like the tiny home village on 6th and Orchard, I think has probably been an unmitigated success. I'll just say that right now. I live a block away. But like the month, I was just joking with one of our staff members, the month I spent having coffee with neighbors and talking them through that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I got really nasty things done. I had neighbors circulate flyers saying that I was going to bring drug addicts and sex predators to the neighborhood, like with my private phone number on it. Like, people don't like that stuff, and they get really mean. And but that's fine. I'm a big kid. That's why I did this job, right? And I wanted to help homeless people, so I'm there. So yes, we can, Sean. I think the city is looking at sites and locations where that possibly could happen. It's just
more like industrial areas, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's there is that piece too. And we've got a big site going down on 69th and Proctor, which is kind of more of an industrial spot. We've looked at some places in the Tide Flats. So I think trying to identify those things as much as we can is important. And that's one of the things the city is doing, is looking at. We're opening the city with ARPA fund side. We're getting rolling. The homeless is buying the Comfort Inn down off of 84th and Housemer. It's 88 units. The city is buying it with the county. We got money from the federal government, and it's going to be set up as 88 units of housing for people. So that's 88 more people we can get off the street into housing. So we're kind of, I think the challenge is, right, and I get it, right, and I tell people this all the time. The need is so big that, like, the city's doing a lot of things, but you still see people on the street, right? There's still people out there. There's still guys sleeping next to Hunt. And so those are pieces of it. We're working on a whole bunch of different stuff, but we could sanction a tent encampment. And there might be some industrial areas, but then in those areas, the business owners start not liking that in their neighborhood. So so as I'm talking to you folks, right, like, I just would say, like, that's part of the conversation we have to have. Like, as I would say, I don't want somebody sleeping next to Hunt. And if there was a sanctioned place that he could go that'd be better than him just sleeping out there. But then then it shifts the calculus. It's like if maybe you don't have anybody living near your house or your business, and now all of a sudden people are showing up, and it's like, what's going on? It's like, well, we gotta share the load, share the wealth on some of this stuff, and hopefully get some. And hopefully, I mean, the goal that the people who are experiencing homelessness, we move them forward in their lives and into a better place. Sorry. First of all, thank you. I appreciate, the conversation around this stuff. I think I really, the groups like yours that are really engaged, and I really appreciate all your time.
Okay, thank you. That was very informative. A lot of good questions there. Anybody else? All right. John, I said earlier, I don't know if you're on, sadly, the West End for the first time in a long time is not doing an organized cleanup this fall because we are down members. We need new board members. I'm involved in another project with Make a Splash and Titlow Park. So I'm gonna promote on Nextdoor independent fall cleanups and also group cleanups if they want to borrow our tools. So we are not organizing a cleanup to go with Tidy Up Tacoma, and I apologize. It's just that we don't have the numbers. So
hopefully, just connecting people to the Narrows cleanup is we can do what we can to kind of help people get involved with that on November.
Okay.
On Narrows Business District 1, yeah.
All right, so have the people, so ask volunteers to come to those two cleanups that I wrote down somewhere. I'm not looking at it right now. To Narrows, those are midweek cleanups, right?
Yeah.
On November 2nd and November 4th.
Oh. Yeah, yes. Actually, hold on for a second. I'm like reading this email as we're going through. At the bottom of the email, that says, I heard from City Crews they're running ahead of schedule and actually coming to Tacoma Narrows on October 21st, which I guess is tomorrow, but TV determined. November 2nd is the date I have. I'll follow up with you all and let you know exactly what's going on.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate it. All righty, if there's any other comments or questions, new business, old business, then I would like to make a motion to end our October West End Council meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This meeting is now ended.
Sherry, can you stay on the line just a little bit?